While we're setting up for the presentation, I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us today. It's a special treat to see this type of crowd here. And we know it's for a good reason. You're interested in the topic, and our mission and goal here is to help boost you a little closer to being interested, those of you who are not currently members, with the Sebring Historical Society. So please consider that. Well, let's get started with the presentation. We have Ken Breslauer here, who's been with the Sebring Raceway as the media director and track historian for the past 32 years. Wow. He received his undergraduate degree in journalism from the University of Florida. There you go. And a master's degree in historical preservation from Goucher College in Baltimore. Besides owning one of the largest auto racing memorabilia collections in the country, Ken also has authored a number of books. His 1996 book, called Sebring, The Official History of America's Great Sports Car Race, received Book of the Year honors from the motorsports world in the following year, 1997. Two additional books, Roadside Paradise, The Golden Age of Florida Tourism Attractions, between 1929 and 1971, as well as Historic Sites and Architecture of St. Petersburg, Florida, both won awards from preservation organizations. It seems this man just doesn't stop. He's currently studying online for a, let me see if I can even pronounce it, meteorology certificate from Penn State University. Wow. Put your hands together and give a warm welcome to the real star of today's show, Mr. Ken Breslauer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here and talk about my favorite subject, Sebring International Raceway. I hope some of you were at the race this year. It was a fantastic event, perfect weather, great race, nationally televised and also shown in 70 countries around the world. And on that note, I would like to acknowledge the president of Sebring International Raceway is here, Wayne Estes. And one of my co-workers who handles the volunteers, which is a really tough job, Jimmy Anzueto is here. So today I'm going to talk not so much about the 12 hours of Sebring, but what happens the other 360 days. A lot of people wonder, well, after the race, what's going on at the track? Well, actually a lot. We're probably the biggest testing facility in North America. We have all kinds of events that happen at Sebring. Before I get started, I would like to mention really something very important, and that's everything that's at Sebring and Sebring Airport originated from Hendricks Field, which was the United States Army Air Force Base that operated from 1942 to 45. A very important part of our history, and we're always very interested in acknowledging that. If you haven't been out to the raceway, we just unveiled a new historic plaque over by the flagpole to honor Hendricks Field. So that is a very, very important thing to always remember. This is an aerial view of the track in 1952, which was the first 12 hours of Sebring. And as you can see, the track incorporated both the runways and the taxiways and then the roads within the airbase. If you look closely, you can see all the different buildings that were part of the Hendricks Field facility. Now today, this is part of our pit structure. And as you can see on the front of the pit structure, there are the names of all the manufacturers that have won the 12 hours of Sebring. And that's really what I'm going to talk about today is why do manufacturers race? What do they get out of it? And why do they come to Sebring? Why is Sebring important in particular? Manufacturers have been involved in motorsports for many years, and there's a slogan that has been used for years called "Win on Sunday, sell on Monday." And of course, in Sebring's case, win on Saturday, sell on Monday. that racing is very important to manufacturers to sell cars. That's why they do it. In sports car racing in particular, there's brand recognition. When you go to a NASCAR race or an IndyCar race, you ask the fans who do they want to win, they'll say the name of the driver. They'll say Dale Earnhardt Jr. or Joey Logano or somebody. When you ask a Sebring fan who he thinks is going to win, they'll say Audi, Porsche, BMW, Jaguar. So sports car fans root for cars, not so much the drivers. And that creates brand loyalty. Race fans who come to Sebring into sports car racing, they're there to support the brand that they like the best, whether it's Corvette or Nissan or Toyota. So there's a real strong loyalty. And as I mentioned, cars are the stars in sports car racing. Manufacturers love sports car racing because the fans follow the manufacturers, not so much the drivers. And another thing that's very important is the track-to-street technology. In racing, things that are developed on the track transfer to cars that you and I drive every day. So that's a very important part of racing. And of course, there's bragging rights when you beat the other brands. So here's a photo of the car that won the first race at Sebring in 1950. Now, how many of you are old enough to remember Crosley refrigerators, Crosley record players? Do you remember the Cincinnati Reds used to play at Crosley Field? Okay, well, that car is called a Crosley. It was built by the same company. It was built from 1939 to 1952. And Time Magazine recently ran a list of the 50 worst cars ever built. And that was number 2 on the list. So you're probably wondering, how could that car win Sebring? Well, it didn't really win. The first race at Sebring was run on a handicap basis, where the cars were handicapped based on engine displacement. So with a tiny little engine, the Crosley, they gave it a head start, figuratively, of like 10 laps. So it somehow managed to win, just motoring along at average 52 miles an hour. So it won the race. But the story behind that car is even more interesting. A young man named Vic Sharp from Tampa drove to Sebring to bring spare parts for another driver competing in the race. And a few drivers there saw the car, and they understood how the handicap formula was going to be used to determine the winner. And they said, "Can we borrow your car for 6 hours?" And so Vic Sharp said, "Sure, go ahead." So a couple guys, Ralph Deshawn and Fritz Topster, talked him into driving in the race. And they won based on the handicap formula. If it had been run as a normal race based on distance, they would have come last. So Mr. Crosley, what does he do? He runs the big ads everywhere. He won the race, which he did, technically. So this sort of started the tradition at Sebring of manufacturers bragging about winning, which is important. Crosley could claim he beat Ferrari and Jaguar and Allard and all the cars back then, which he kind of did. So to manufacturers ever since the first Sebring race have utilized advertising to brag about winning Sebring because it is such an important event, it's such a demanding event. This is a photo that shows the start of the 1957 race, I believe. And this is the Le Mans start where all the drivers run the cars. And that was used up until 1969. And in the background you can see the old hangar that was in turn 1. If you look carefully, you can see the old water tower in the background. But the reason I show this photo is you see a tremendous variety of cars. There's some Renaults in the front, and there's Jaguars and Ferraris and Porsches. And that's another reason why sports car racing is so appealing to manufacturers, is that they're different classes. Unlike NASCAR or IndyCar, where there's just one winner, we have all these different classes, so that cars can compete fairly with cars in their own engine displacement category. So again, they can brag about winning. This car here, if you remember the name Briggs Cunningham, this car was built in West Palm Beach, Florida. It's the only car to win the 12 Hours of Sebring that was built in Florida. Briggs Cunningham was a multi-millionaire yachtsman. He won the America's Cup. And he started dabbling in sports car racing. And the reason he was racing was he wanted to sell road cars. So again, even though he was a small manufacturer, here's a case of somebody using racing to sell the brand. And it isn't just car manufacturers who competed at Sebring and used wins at Sebring to advertise. Tire manufacturers have played a big role in racing, and Firestone, Goodyear, Goodrich, Michelin, Dunlop, they've all raced at Sebring, won at Sebring, tested at Sebring, and they use that as advertising. Here's a Dunlop ad from the early 60s. Of course, manufacturers are the most important aspect of sports car racing, and no manufacturer has won Sebring more than Porsche. And they have always used advertising, posters, and now TV advertising, print advertising to promote their wins. This is a photo of the MG team after winning Sebring, probably about 1960. And again, this is a case of why sports car racing is so appealing to manufacturers. MG couldn't beat Ferrari or Maserati, but within their own class, they could win. And they would use Sebring and major sports car races like Le Mans to promote the fact that their cars had won and had beaten the competition. Again, here's another ad, Porsche, but this is for Champion spark plugs. All different kinds of manufacturers, brake manufacturers, light manufacturers, tire manufacturers have used Sebring to promote their success. Now at Sebring, we have these areas called car corrals where enthusiasts gather who all have the same type of car. There's a Porsche corral and a Corvette corral and BMW and other manufacturers. This photo was taken 50 years ago at the 1967 12 Hours, showing the Corvette corral. And boy, there'll be a lot of Corvettes that just love to get those cars now. But again, it shows brand loyalty. Sports car racing is very unique that way. Today, our biggest car corral is Corvette. It has been for years. Porsche is almost as big. So you have a very devoted following of fans for manufacturers in sports car racing. Again, and that's why Sebring is such an important event for them. Here's the Ferrari team in the early 60s. And a little story about Ferrari. They were dominating sports car racing in the late 50s and early 60s. And the president of the Ford Motor Company at that time, Edsel Ford, he said, we should buy them. That way, we can own the name and we can win races. They weren't playing any sports car races at that time. So Mr. Ford goes to Italy and meets with Enzo Ferrari, the owner and founder of Ferrari. And they have this long negotiation period, and Ford really wants to buy Ferrari. And they get down to, they finally agreed pretty much on a deal, but Enzo Ferrari finally says, well, you have a deal except I get to run the race team. It's my race team and I get to run it. And Ford said, no, if we buy Ferrari, we buy Ferrari. And so Mr. Ferrari says, well, in that case, let me show you to the door. And he escorted out the Ford people. And when Ford got back to Detroit, he said, well, they're going to pay a price for that. We're going to beat them on track. And Ford started probably the biggest racing program sports car racing has ever seen. And they ended up beating Ferrari in 66, 67 at Sebring and Le Mans. And it created one of the biggest rivalries ever seen in motorsports. It's now legendary. So you can see that bragging rights and egos play a big part in motorsports. And it's been played out many times in the 12 Hours of Sebring. And even today, the same thing. These photos were taken at this year's race. Two rivals, Ford and Chevrolet, battling it out at Sebring. Ford decided to revive the Ford GT that I just told you about, beat Ferrari in the 60s, and built a new car. And who do they need to beat? They need to beat Ferrari, they need to beat Corvette. And at Sebring this year, they had 3 factory cars, Corvette had 2. And the president of Ford Motor Company flew down, confident to see Ford in victory lane. And they didn't win. Chevrolet beat them. So it's still a big rivalry. Manufacturers love sports car racing and they love Sebring. Porsche, though, has been the most dominant manufacturer over the history of the race. Porsche has 18 overall wins in the 65 years, 70 class wins. Ferrari has 12 wins, Audi 11 wins, most of those in recent years. Ford has won 4 times. As you can see, American manufacturers have not had a lot of success at Sebring, but in recent years they've been having some good luck. Now, we talked a lot about European cars, American cars, but we didn't talk too much about Japanese cars. As the Japanese car industry started to dominate, they said, well, we're going to go racing too. And in the late 80s, Nissan came to Sebring, and it was their first attempt with a prototype to win 12 Hours of Sebring, and they dominated the race. They broke Porsche's 13-year win streak, and it opened up a whole new era in sports car racing. And when they won the race, they ran this advertisement, which bragged about how they had ended Porsche's win streak. So again, there's a lot of bragging rights in sports car racing. Now, this is the historic Sebring circuit that ran from 1952 to 82. I should say the original one. And as you can see, it was 5.2 miles, and the black part is asphalt, and then the other part is concrete. And the track was virtually unchanged for 30 years. There was a minor change to the Webster turn made in 1967. But essentially, that track was not changed at all. Well, that's one of my favorite things. This is a placemat from the Circle Cafeteria. How many people remember that downtown here? That's a really good map of the circuit. So, what happens the rest of the year at Sebring? Well, we have a lot of clubs that come to Sebring. We have the Porsche Club, the Porsche BMW Club, Sports Car Club of America. All kinds of clubs come and race various weekends during the year. We have racing schools, driving schools that come frequently. We have private testing, which is very important to us. Most of the IndyCar teams utilize Sebring as their winter test home. Where else can you run in winter? Most of the tracks are snowed in, or they're so cold that they can't get the tires to the right temperature. So Sebring is an ideal place to test that. We have a lot of corporate events, introductions of new cars, a lot of tire testing. Very important part of Sebring is the tire testing. Manufacturers love Sebring because of the variety of surfaces. We have concrete surface, asphalt surface, left-hand turns, right-hand turns, smooth asphalt, rough asphalt. It's real world conditions. Most tracks are so smooth and so perfect, manufacturers don't really get much out of testing there. When they come to Sebring, they really get to test in real world conditions. And we also now have off-road testing. So we have a very group of events that happen. But one of the most important things that happened in Sebring's history, a lot of people don't know about. In 1986, the Sebring Airport Authority received a grant to remove the races off the runways. The Federal Aviation Administration got a little bit tired of worrying about planes and cars running the air. And they said, you know, you really got to do something to prevent this. So when they got the grant, the track was reconfigured. So the airport and the raceway became two separate entities, essentially. That way, the raceway could run year-round. We could rent the track for testing year-round. We could also divide the track into two different circuits. So it's a very important date because that was really the year that Sebring Raceway became a permanent facility. A lot of people don't understand that the race was really like a temporary event. You know, they had the race in March, and then the rest of the year was back to being an industrial complex and an airport. So in '86, the raceway really became a year-round facility. You could divide the circuit into two different tracks, so two different teams could test at the same time. Of course, used year-round. And another important thing, of course, is the economic impact. Having the track open year-round, teams come in and test. Sometimes they bring dozens of people, support crews, tire companies, and so forth. You know, they buy hotel rooms and they eat out and they buy other things. So it really has helped the economy, making it a year-round facility. This is an aerial photo that was actually taken before this year's race. And you can see this is looking to the south. The Green Park section is closest to you. And we can make that a separate circuit. That's where the Indy cars test. And then another circuit to the south of that could be used at the same time, often is for driving schools and so forth. So by having two different circuits, we can accommodate two different teams with two different goals at the same time. And even now more than ever, manufacturers find racing at Sebring very, very important. You probably have heard that Audi was the dominant manufacturer at Sebring recently, and they introduced many innovations to the track and to racing that transferred into the road cars. And they won 11 times in 13 years and really established themselves as one of the leading manufacturers. Also this year, for the first time, Mercedes won. They won the GTD class. And for the first time, Cadillac won. They won overall this year. It's a factory car, and it doesn't look much like a Cadillac, but it's a prototype. Again, GM is using racing technology to transfer it to their road cars. And in addition, they're using it for bragging. They beat all the other manufacturers. Okay, it's quiz time. What famous journalist raced in the 12 Hours of Sebring? This is the easy one. That's too easy. Yeah, Walter Cronkite drove in the 12 Hours of Sebring in 1959, drove a Lancia. There he is. He was also the official announcer for the track on the CBS radio network from 1956 to 1960. All right, which of these entertainers competed in the 12 Hours of Sebring? Now, I'm old enough to know who Jackie Cooper is. Dick's mother. All the above is correct. I can't trick you guys. By the way, the most successful, though Steve McQueen almost won the race in 1970, he came in second place. However, probably the most successful of those drivers was Dick Smothers from the Smothers Brothers. He won class twice, finished in the top 10 3 times. A very good driver. He was inducted to the Hall of Fame last year at Sebring. There's a Gene Hackman on the left. That's Steve McQueen in the upper right, with Peter Revson from the Revlon portion, who he came second with. And then there's Dick Smothers in the lower right, celebrating one of his wins. All right, final question. What type of engine has never won the 12 Hours of Sebring? Well, diesel won several times. Both Audi and Peugeot won using diesel engine. Hybrid won several times. Four-cylinder engine won several times. Rotary engine won several times in the GT class. Jet turbines never won. However, 50 years ago, next year, somebody entered a jet-powered car. If you remember the Howmet turbine car, and it ran very strong. But that's the only type of engine that's never won at Sebring. Maybe next year, we'll see. And that concludes my presentation as the sun sets over Sebring Raceway. Anyone has any questions?
Who actually owns the physical track?
Well, the Sebring Airport Authority owns the track. It's leased by NASCAR.
Is that first driver that was going 52 miles an hour still on State Road 27?
Well, you know, we have one of the Sebring Raceway has one of the best safety records of any track in North America. And I would take driving on the raceway over 27.
Pardon me. I noticed you displayed and had a board on the events other than the race. And I'm curious, of course, we all know the race attracts a lot of spectators. Excuse me. I say, I know that we have a lot of spectators at the normal race. I wonder if events throughout the year are spectator oriented.
The answer is some are and some aren't. Every SCCA event that happens, they run weekends full of races. The Sports Car Club of America runs a weekend, and Ken, how many do they have? We run up there probably 5-6 times a year.
6 times.
When they race, their races are completely open to the public. When HSR runs its historic race, or SBRA also runs a historic race in Trans Am, those races are open to the public and an admission is charged. In almost all of these cases, these are people who rent the track from us, and so it's up to them on how they want to admit people and how they want to keep things private. So that's how it works.
Well, the reason I ask is the people who are interested in promoting Sebring and events here in Sebring, I think would like to know more about this part of the race event that would be through the year, not just on the day of the year.
And we are working on that. Since I've been there, I think we've started to try to put more of a schedule of the events that are where the public are welcome. We're putting it on our website now. We intend to promote these a little bit more. We had a few things we had to get straightened out in my first year, and I think we've made a lot of progress, and we intend to let people know a lot more about the things that are open to the public.
I get an email from the track about all the events, so if someone signs up at your...
There's your email guy right there. Ken has been putting out the 12 to-goes that you see throughout the course of the year, and he does an excellent job of letting people know the things that we would authorize them to know. But we have to go to our track renders and ask them, is it okay to publicize? And in some cases they say, depends on our insurance. Somehow legal and risk always ends up in the equation somewhere. But we're one about it.